All right, everybody. Hope you guys can hear me. That took a minute. So sorry. That was ridiculous. All right, give me 1 second and I'll put this back up. So, how is everybody? I hope you guys are good. Can you all hear me fine? If you guys can all hear me good, just drop a one in the chat so I know everybody can hear me. I don't hear anything. I think something's wrong. Okay. Okay, thank you guys. I'm glad you can hear me. All right, so did all of you see the interview yesterday? So we're gonna go over that. I'm gonna start with that one just because that was the freshest that just happened. So I'm gonna start with that one, and then we'll see how far we can get, and whether or not I'll do this first interview in this video or not. We'll see how it goes. All right. So when let me start by saying this. When I did these interviews, okay. I'll go back to full screen in a second. When I do these interviews, the thought process in my head was, all right, let me just ask my questions and then let me ask my questions and then shut my mouth and just let him take it where he's going to take it. Just let him say what he needs to say. I was not confrontational during these interviews because I know in my mind that the minute you become defensive, the interview's over because they're going to walk. So let me just say that to all of you. All right, that's why I did what I did, to keep him talking, to keep the interviewee talking, right? That's the idea. All right, let me do this and then I'll start this with you guys. But I know a lot of people were like, man, I don't know how you just kept it so calm. And I tried to have a poker face the entire interview. I tried. I believe you can learn a lot if you just sometimes zip it and listen. Now, if I could get somebody like Sammy on here, or I think that would be the hardest one for me. Like, that would really test my interview skills right there. All right. Let's go. Hi, everybody. Okay. So let's get started. Hey, Sass. All right. Let's share this. All right. Now I'll play it and then I'll stop it when, we need to talk about some things. All right. Let's see. Oh, wait 1 second. Sorry. I keep forgetting to do this. So the first one I want to ask you is about, which I'm sure you have heard because it caused a lot of stir online. But so when they pulled the vehicle out, you could see there was a belt hanging out of the back hatch. Did you see that? Like, so you saw that when you were there. Do you know what?
I didn't see that. I did not see that in person, just because as they pulled the car out, like I mentioned, David just wanted to see the car,
right?
And so we left after that.
Okay.
So because they took the car right to the they had set up tents and stuff, which was the FBI team. so no, I did not see it. I only saw it as everybody else saw it.
Now here he says, so I asked about the seatbelt and that was sticking out of the back hatch, right? And here he says that he did not see it in person, but in my previous interview, he said that he had saw inside the vehicle, right? He already has answers. Which I don't know. And if you notice, this was one question where he didn't talk for 5 minutes after. Like, he didn't go on about a bunch of other things. He literally was just like, no, I didn't see it. I saw it the way everybody else saw it. And David just wanted to see the car pulled out. So he really does not go into anything about that belt, which tells me that he knows about this belt, right? That's what it says to me, because, and which is exactly why I went back to this question at the end of the interview, because I'm like, it threw me off when he didn't honestly go on and ramble on and talk like in circles and lead me out to left field somewhere like he does in other questions. So I was like, okay, that one stuck in my mind, right? And so I really think that he knows something about that belt, because like I said, when I brought it up, he just answered the question and didn't go on way out over here somewhere. So, which is why I end up circling back to this question. But let's keep going. And here's where he starts to say some other things. Oh, shit. Hold up. Why in the fuck does that do that? Okay, give me 1 second, you guys. I'm sorry. I need to get this up here. There we go. Okay. I got it now. My bad. Did you hear anything about that when you were there? Like, was that talked about at all?
No.
No, it wasn't.
No.
Okay. The next thing see right there when I said, well, did you hear anybody talking about the belt? Was it mentioned at all? His answer was just a straight no. That's it. He didn't go on. He just said no, which if you've listened to any of his other interviews should tell you something. Okay. That's all I'm saying. Do you guys know what I'm saying? I wanted to ask you. So this was really surprising to me, which I found a little bit odd, was when they released that photo, the last known photo of Kylie, they said from that gas station or wherever it was taken. I thought it was odd that they didn't release, because normally when somebody goes missing, they'll put out an alert and they'll say, okay, well, this person was last seen here on CCTV footage at Walmart. You know what I'm saying? At wherever the address is. But it was kind of kept like they didn't say the name of the business. They just said a local truckie business.
Yeah.
Do you know where that, like what store that was taken at?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you know why they were so secretive about it? Why they didn't want to tell people what store it was?
So I think that what you'll find is in cases, any type of case, including missing cases, is that if crime is still on the table, in other words, they had not found her, and one of the theories was that it could have been an abduction, then I think you'll find almost all the time, unless there was a lot of eyewitnesses, they will hold back the information on that, because when they're questioning a suspect, if that person then starts dropping the name of the business, they can be like, how do you know that that's where the surveillance was taken?
Now that right there is BS. Because I know, because I watch the news all the time, I've gone over many cases. When somebody is missing, they will say, here's her on video. We have this person on video at Walmart at 6 p.m. Friday, the 18th. You know what I'm saying? That's how they do it. I've never in my life heard them go, well, here, this person is seen at a local business at 6 at this time, but never say the name of the business, never give out the address, never say, hey, if anyone was there at this time, you might have seen her, please come forward. None of that. They were just like, here's a picture that does not look like Kylie, that we're saying is Kylie, that was taken at a local business. No, you can't know which business, but here's the last known sighting of her. What? You know what it's so crazy. And he's like, that's common. No, that is not common. Just think about how many times you've seen that on the news where they put out a thing and they're like, hey, this person was over here at Walmart at 6 p.m. on Friday. Were you there? If you were there, check. You know what I'm saying? That was never done. This was all let's keep this quiet. We don't need the name of this business getting out. Why is that? Because we all know it wasn't fucking Kylie in the picture. That's why. I'm sorry for cussing. Okay, let's move on.
Taken if you weren't with her or if you didn't go there or run across her there. So I think that's why. And quite frankly, I don't understand why it was a big secret, especially after she was found. I don't know if it's just the FBI always plays the silence game and everything. They never give information. And it becomes, a real problem, especially when they work with I know local law enforcement agencies, quite frankly, don't like working with FBI because they come in and they take control, and then there's items that just would help. I believe putting information out there is super critical, especially in missing cases, because the more eyeballs that are out there looking for the person and working off good information, the better. I understand there's some that could be held back. I don't understand why the surveillance was an issue unless the business itself asked for it, but I've never heard anything from that.
Okay, now I do just want to say this real quick. I feel like some of the stuff that he says that we don't believe, like some of it, not all of it, okay? But I feel like some of the stuff that he says, like he's convinced himself is true, right? Like when he talks about, later on in the interview, when he talks about her car going into the lake. Like, I think he believes that. And, he really does believe that that's how it happened. But with that being said, I think he believes that because I don't know if he was told that like over and over and over again, and he had to try to convince himself it was true just to like get through it. You know what I'm saying? But I do think that some of the stuff he says he actually believes is the truth. On the other hand, there are certain questions like the seatbelt question and the photo not looking like her. I think that those things he can't justify it to himself, so he really can't give you much of an answer. You know what I'm saying? Right. Okay.
And it's it's a pretty big place. I mean, I don't mind saying it was the hell was it? It was like an RV park combination gas station type thing. It was right above. When I say above, it was there where like mags and also Sammy and them lived this complex that they lived in, it's kind of just on the outside perimeter of that, on the, I guess it'd be like the northeast side
Okay.
along the highway.
Okay. And so you're saying like if they think it's an abduction, like they'll sometimes withhold that because if somebody comes and forward and says, "Hey, I was at the RV," you know what I'm saying, the RV park store or
Well,
whatever.
so if yeah, I mean, well, one, the FBI is just silent about everything. They have this blanket policy, but even local law enforcement a lot of times won't give out details, because if they bring in a suspect and they say they're questioning, and then this person says, "Well, when Kylie was getting gas at the RV," I'm not being vague, I just forget the name of the place. If I heard it, I would know it. But um, if they say, if the person says, "Well, when she got gas at the RV park," and they would say, "We haven't. How do you know that she was at the RV?" So there's some things they want to hold back. I don't know if that one really would be one that can be tied in. But I do know just from experience that the FBI never gives information about anything, and they do come in and they take control of. They have jurisdiction, especially since this happened. Um, um, in a it wasn't a federal park. So, but I mean, just when they come in, they take control, and it kind of um, creates problems. So I think they err on the side of caution. The local law enforcement does, and goes along with what they're saying. I don't agree with that. It's a situation that comes up over and over in cases where putting information out there, would have helped, probably, because this is a highly trafficked gas station. So by putting that out there, that could have cued some people, be like, "Oh, I do remember seeing her." I kind of thought maybe when I saw it on the news that could have been her, but now that you say it's at that gas station, it definitely was, because I was there, and here's my receipts.
And
So
see, that was my thing too, was normally they do that because they're so other people can be like, "Hey, I was there around that time.
yeah,
Did I see any?" You know what I'm saying? And maybe it clicks into your head.
they, I think they should have. They just, if you look in the Gabby Petito case and stuff too, they just never give out information.
Mhm.
Julissa Fuentes case, which was going on kind of at the same time, 50 miles or 100 miles away from there. Same thing. They just, I don't, I don't agree with it, and I don't think that they're as great as they have the reputation for being in these cases. But they do wield a lot of power.
Now, did dad or grandpa say anything to you about now? So this kind of ties into the photo that was taken at the gas station.
Yeah.
But did anybody say anything to you about had Kylie cut her hair recently? Because I've looked at that photo a bunch of times,
Hmm.
and her hair. Every photo we've seen of her, she has much longer hair, and in the gas station photo, it's just short hair, short length hair. So I wondered if, maybe she had possibly cut her hair and nobody told, you know what I'm saying? We didn't. Okay, now right here, when I'm asking about this photo, he knows why I'm saying what I'm saying. You all know why I'm saying what I'm saying. So I was trying to get, because it's not Kylie, clearly. It looks nothing like Kylie. Okay. So, and he knew it, and everybody else knew it. So my thing was, okay, I got to address this picture without him thinking, "Oh my God." No, sorry. Somebody just pulled in my driveway. I gotta ask about this picture without him thinking I'm doing it in a confrontational way, or without him thinking that it's hard to explain, but you guys know what I'm trying to say here. I was trying to bring up the picture in an inoffensive way as to not get him to become defensive, right? So that's what I was trying to do here. That's all. I was trying to bring up an important point, which I was like, what's he going to say when I say, "Listen, the hair doesn't match. It looks nothing like her"? What's he going to say? Did she cut her hair? So I was trying to find a way to ask about it without, basically being a total asshole. Okay. I know somebody just pulled in my damn driveway. All right, let me do this, and then you guys are gonna have to give me 1 second because I gotta go unlock the door. No, so I'd wondered if you had heard that at all.
No, I don't know about the hair. I did. I know specifically. I talked to her father about. Um, I without. I hate to be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was. I wasn't sure if wasn't she wearing like two necklaces or supposed to be wearing two.
Well, they
And
said, yeah, they said it was a necklace, but it was like a 3-part necklace.
okay, and I couldn't tell. I remember asking him. I couldn't tell if it was if there were if there was like two or whatever, or if it was like a single one. And her father said her father didn't have any doubt at all that it was her. He said it's absolutely her, and he had seen her. Well, her grandfather had seen her the day she went missing, up to like 12:30 in the afternoon. But her father, her and Jagger had gone down to Lake Tahoe. He lives at the lake part. Um, he had seen her just days before, so he had no question it was her. And in fact, uh, when the photos first came out, remember, the girls that were like in a car, it's taken some app where it takes backwards, or uses your reverse camera or something like
Yeah.
that. And remember, there was a couple girls outside the car and a couple girls inside or something like that. And those had just like been disclosed. I remember showing those to her father, and immediately he's like, "That's not my daughter." Because there were some people saying that, "Oh, is this Kylie?" And then there was one of like a girl passed out in the back of a car or something that I think ended up being an old photo. But he's like, "That's 100% not my daughter." So he was very certain, of what.
Okay.
And he
Yeah,
never questioned the surveillance photo. Plus, we had a receipt that she had been there.
So then he goes on to say, well, there was never any question to her father whether or not that was her. Plus, we have a receipt. And I'm like, oh, you have a receipt? And he's like, well, we have her credit card statements. So, I mean, how easily could it have been for Sammy to have her card pay for something at the store, which clearly is what happened? And, oh, well, we have the receipts. Okay, that proves absolutely nothing, though. And he says that, I don't know if I might have missed it. I don't know if he just said it here or if he says it in a little while. You guys can remind me in the chat. But then he says that that Kylie and Jagger were just at Daniel's in Lake Tahoe together, right? Which automatically popped in my head and really pissing me off. I know a lot of you guys think Jay has nothing to do with this, and that very well may be. But think about this. He just said that a couple days before she went missing, Kylie and Jay were in Lake Tahoe together at her father's house. Okay. But yet you have Jay going, well, he didn't have any pictures of her on his social media until after she went missing. And when I asked him about that, he said, well, why would I? We broke up. We broke up. We weren't close anymore. Okay, then why, after she went missing, did you fill your social media with pictures of her? And why were you all, oh, she's my angel. I love her so much. She's the love of my life. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's why I look at Jay sideways. And I mean, he just told you that they were in Lake Tahoe together. Okay. Oh, you did have her.
Well, her bank. I mean, they had access to her banking activity, so they knew that she had gotten 2 gallons of gas there.
Okay, I know, and a lot of people had talked about that 2 gallons of gas. Everyone was like, well, she couldn't have gone far. You know what I'm saying? But it could have been just topping off the tank.
Keep in mind, we're talking about a 16-year-old kid who
right.
doesn't have a lot of money. Gas, I think, at that time was like, because we're in California, I think it was like $8 or $8.25 a gallon. So that was her routine. She would buy, $15 worth of gas, and
right.
So I know that I've heard people say, oh, it's like 40-minute drive here. It's not far. You come down, she could have gotten home without traffic and probably, once she got out of the park area, she could have gotten home in like probably 7 or 8 minutes. It's not a far drive. In fact, I recorded it, and
Right.
so I know that people. I've heard people say, "Oh, it's like 40-minute drive here." It's not far. You come down. She could have gotten home without traffic and probably, once she got out of the park area, she could have gotten home in like probably 7 or 8 minutes.
Okay, I want to have somebody check that. Can somebody check that real quick? Go on Google and Google it from the RV park store, whatever the hell the name of that store is, RV something. Go from there to the Lost Trail Lodge and tell me, because they said that it's about a half hour drive from there to there. He's telling me you can make that drive in 7 minutes. That can't be right. Sammy said, if you remember during her interview, when Tony Dodge pulled up that map and he said, so it's about it's about this distance from Prosser to her house. And Prosser is not far from the RV park gas station, right? That was the whole story. So explain to me how it took. And Sammy said, she goes, yeah, it took about 38 minutes. We found out, which means they drove that, which means Kylie was not driving her car. Samantha was probably driving the car, which is why she made it a point to say, I'm in the passenger seat, just to prove that she wasn't, or just to get us thinking she was not in the driver's seat, right? But there's no way. How do you go from 38 to 40-minute drive and tell me you can get there in 7 minutes? And yeah, and she knew it to the exact minute because she goes, we found out, which means they had to drive it and time it to know that. Okay.
It's not a far drive. In fact, I recorded it when I was up there, then put it on my Twitter. I drove the whole thing and then recorded it because people wanted to see what it was like coming out. It's not a very far drive. Now, when she gets to her gate, because she is like, when she hit, it's not her gate, it's like a parks department gate. When you get through that, it becomes dirt road to the lodge. That's like 4 miles. It's not long, but it takes a long time because the road is so rough. So, not including, that I'm just talking about from like gate to the entrance to the reservoir. It's really not far. So you wouldn't burn up that much gas. But that was her routine, she would just get money here and there and, or spend small amounts of money. I used to do the same thing when I was younger. I would never fill up my car, I would hope my
I totally get
parents or
that.
somebody would,
Yeah. No, I totally get that. Okay, now another question I want to ask you is about did you see the autopsy after it was released?
Yes.
Okay. Now the autopsy came back, no drug. I mean, now this part made me mad too when he's like, "Oh, nope, she had coke." No, she did not. Everybody was confused about that when that autopsy came out. Do y'all remember? Okay, wait. Melissa's got 22 minutes, 27 minutes. Yeah, there's no way you can make that drive in 7 minutes. So I don't know where he's getting that from. 22 minutes, 7.7 miles. Let's see. Okay, so anyway, with the autopsy, a lot of people thought that in the beginning, but because it did start talking about cocaine and all of these other things, but they were saying this is how much it has to be to test for it. She didn't have any in her system. She had nicotine and freaking THC. That's it. A little bit of THC in her system. but no alcohol, just THC and nicotine.
And coke. Trace amounts of cocaine, I think, and then small amount of alcohol.
But
well, 0.08 alcohol.
Yeah, a couple doctors had said that could be just from the
yeah, right, and a certain amount of that. Yeah,
but it goes against Sammy's story about how wasted she was at the party. You know what I'm saying? So it kind of blew that all out of the water. So I think that's why a lot of people are still really confused, because they're like, okay, was there a party? Because if there was, and Sammy's story is true, then the autopsy's wrong. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And people are like, if the autopsy's right, then Sammy was lying and it's all wrong.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if this was mentioned to you at all, if Grandpa had talked to you about it at all or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely thought that the alcohol levels would be higher than they were, because there was, I remember I saw the car underwater and footage from inside. There was quite a few Truly cans in the car. So I thought it would come out higher for sure. Still.
Okay, I want to take a second to address this comment. Let me pull it up. I have to say, I personally believe that what you're admitting to doing here is crappy. You wanted an interview, which he was kind enough to do, yet you had a hidden agenda. I'm not an SF fan, but if you thought he was lying, what was the point to have a second interview? Now I'm going to tell you this. I could not have been more professional during these interviews, okay? The second thing I'm going to tell you is, once these interviews were done, I would have done it with anybody I interviewed. Once the interviews were done and I could go back and really listen to what was said without being the person there asking the questions, and really go through what he said, what his responses were. I don't know anybody who would not have done the same thing. Now, did you just hear me, or did you come in a little bit late? Because I said that I have no beef with this guy personally. Has nothing to do with me, right? But he was there. He was willing to talk. He was willing to answer questions, and I was willing to listen. But now, after I've done all that, now I have the right to go back and really try to listen to what he said. And if I hear discrepancies or I hear something that I don't think makes sense, I'm not being an asshole. I'm not calling him out, calling him names, doing any of that. Okay. I am doing what anybody else would do to try to pick apart what was said, to try to get all the discrepancies talked about. Because if you're not going to do that, what's the point? What's the point of you just going on there, asking the questions, and then leaving it at that and calling it a day? Right? I think I've been very respectful, and I think I have been very professional with this whole thing. Now, right now, I'm not tearing him down. I'm not saying everything he says is a lie, but when he says something I disagree with, I'm going to say that. I mean, if you don't like that, don't listen, I guess, is all I could say. But I'm not doing anything wrong, and I'm not being a jerk, and I'm not tearing him apart. If he says something I disagree with, I address that. That's where it gets left.
Well, keep in mind, let's say 0.06 of that or whatever, because I understand that, the body produces, alcohol as well, but also it's hard to get there's also errors on the other side. It come out lower just from the decomp itself. So depending on, and I think in this case, they got it from, I forget where they got the blood from. They didn't get it from the eyeball, but somewhere else. But so let's say she's like 0.06 or whatever. It's not huge, but for a 16-year-old, that's not super experienced driver, just having a small amount of impairment, plus being she was high, she was, there was THC in her system. It just doesn't out there at at night. I think in this case they got it from I forget where they got the blood from. Not they didn't get it from the eyeball, but somewhere else. But so let's say she's like 0.06 or whatever. It's not huge, but for a 16-year-old that's not super experienced driver, just having a small amount of impairment, plus being she was high, she was, there was THC in her system. It just doesn't out there at night. I mean, I can't tell you like how dark it gets there. And it would just be, it doesn't take much to be screwing around either on her phone or whatever and not pay attention, and all of a sudden the water's right there and the panic. It doesn't take a ton of impairment to make a wrong turn. And keep in mind, like I told you last time, the reason she had that surgery on her wrist was because she had a snowmobile accident. So she's
Okay. Now, here he says she was in a snowmobile accident before it was an ATV. We know it was an ATV accident. Now, he could have easily just gotten that mixed up. You know what I mean? So for people to be like, well, first it was an ATV and then it was a snowmobile. Like that, he could have misspoke during that, but it was an ATV accident, just so we are all clear. Okay. And now saying about her being young and having 0.06 or whatever. First of all, we know that the ethanol was from the decomp, right? But even if, let's just say, even if that wasn't the case, even if, and her blood alcohol was 0.06, I mean, what is that? 2 beers? I mean, she's not going to be impaired enough to drive into a lake with 2 beers in her system. You know what I'm saying? That just doesn't, that's not realistic thinking. You can be like, listen, I know you can be like, well, she was a small girl. She was 100 pounds soaking wet. I get that, but it also wasn't the first time that she's had alcohol. You know what I'm saying? Now I'm not saying that because I don't believe there was a party, period. But going along with the story of him, of saying, okay, yep, there was a party. She was drunk, blah, blah, blah. Not off 2 beers. She wasn't. I don't care what anybody says. Do you know how many dark roads, back roads? I mean, we grew up in the country. Do you know how many back roads we've partied up at? It's always dark. But I've never known anyone to crash on their way home. There's a lake here. I've never known anybody to drive in it with 2 beers in your system. You know what I'm saying? It just is not realistic to think that way. Yes, I get it. Accidents could happen, but not likely. When she grew up in that area, they do this all the time. She's driven that how many times? Her grandpa came right out and said, Kylie has driven these roads so many times. There's no way. No way.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
kind of prone to some of these things. She's not some expert driver. She definitely like had driven and driven around the lodge area before, probably before she was licensed, just because that's just that lifestyle back there. But it doesn't make her a pro driver, and you could just get distracted. I mean, screwing around with something else, and or if she'd gone down, I think my personal, and this isn't based off of hearing anything from anyone, but I think because there's those phone calls that she makes, I think she comes down the hill. I think she's probably looking for Sammy, or somebody, and thinking she needs to give them a ride home, and he comes down and doesn't find them down because there was a bunch of kids on the lower area, down by that second peninsula, and there was a bunch of cars parked there too. I think she probably
Right. Okay, see, now here he's saying that there was a bunch of cars parked down by the water, down by the peninsula. Before, originally, the cops said that there might have been a few people down there, but there weren't any vehicles because there weren't any what? Tire tracks, which I do go to ask him. I'm like, the next day, there were no tire tracks going into the water. So how did the car get in there, right? How do you all think that the car drove into the lake when there's no damn tire tracks there? And but right now he's telling us that the mud is so soft and it's so soft down there that you could see the squiggly line, you could see her like fishtailing marks. We never heard about that before, right? So either they weren't really there or they were there and they were just kept from the public, which I don't know why that would be, especially since they're pushing the accident narrative.
Comes down and maybe is pissed that she's left alone. I mean, that the whole thing comes down to she should not have been left alone. Um, that is infuriating. And I know that for certain family members, that's the big thing for them is like a 16-year-old should not get, like, even if nothing happened, a 16-year-old should not have been left at a party. I mean, they don't know what type of people are out there. So I mean, not necessarily the party, but there's campgrounds and everything around. There's no reason a 16-year-old should have been left alone, and that wasn't supposed to be the deal. So you're muted.
I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
I get that. And one of my biggest things was, as you know, as a mother, one of my biggest things was I don't understand how certain family members, one really, could be so chummy and so buddy with Samantha, who claimed to be the last person to see her, which means she left her there in that state. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that just really rubbed me the wrong way. And I was just like, okay, what's going on here? Because I feel like any mother is going to be super, super pissed off at the girl who left your daughter there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do. I don't think she left. I mean, I'm not going to get into details just because this just gets into family privacy.
Right.
But
I get that.
I can tell you that people.
I mean, does anybody else think it's odd so I ask about Lindsay and why she's so close to Sammy, when in fact, going with the story, Sammy's the one who left Kylie there all by herself. And then he says, well, I'm not going to really get into that because that's family privacy, right? But we're talking about Sammy here. We're not talking about Kylie. So why are we not talking about it? Why is Sammy included in the family privacy business?
Were under the impression that she was going to somebody else was going to drive her. She had made it sound like somebody else would be taking her home in those late night calls or texts that she sent. So
and this is another thing that I wanted to point out. So right here where he talks about the late night calls and the late night texts, we were told of one text message to Lindsay saying that Kylie was going to be leaving in 45 minutes. What other text messages were there? Because he didn't say the one text message to her mom. He said the late night calls and the late night texts. So who else was she talking to? Who else were these messages sent to, right? See, there's a lot of the story, guys, that we still don't have. There's a lot of the story that we still don't know.
I think there's a little fib on her part too, probably. And why that is, I don't know. But one of the reasons I came out with the fire cam revelation is because I saw some people that were at the party, and I don't mind saying her. I can't remember the girl who had talked to Chronicles of Olivia. And then there was that Jane Doe 1 and 2 interview or something. But the girl that identified herself, you're muted again. I can't.
Yeah, I try to keep it muted while you're talking.
So sorry. Yeah,
no, you're good.
But the one girl, Anna or something, I forget. But there's people that I think knew that knew certain parts of them, but then were saying stuff that didn't make any sense. So I know that probably doesn't make sense. But I guess the way to wrap it up is, or what I can say on that is, I don't think it was a situation where, or I know it wasn't a situation where it was just on Sammy to get her home. Like she had said, hey, I'm actually going to get a ride home from so-and-so. So now, should Sammy have made sure that happened because Kylie's only 16 years old? Yes. Should a change of who she's going home happened? I don't think so. I think it was, I think she got, I think her friends betrayed her, and I get that they're only 18, but it's a pretty big, you just don't leave somebody out in a wilderness area like that. Not when there's any drinking going on. Maybe Sammy thought she was a lot more hammered just because maybe Sammy was hammered, and she figured she was on the same level. But all that also like kind of threw people off because we all thought she was wasted, like stumbling drunk, and that wasn't the case. So
right. Like they made it.
There's a lot of discrepancies.
Yeah, they made it sound like she was completely hammered.
I'm not saying there's not discrepancies in this case. There are. However, none of them lead to, in my mind, and I think law enforcement agrees, none of them lead to somebody doing something that Kylie. They lead to is kids made bad decisions and now try to cover up those bad decisions so they don't get in trouble, and it just makes it look like something that it's not.
Right. Okay. Now I did want to ask you about this now, because I know Grandpa was a staple that you were close. He was there, right? He was very invested in what was going on, trying to figure out what happened to his granddaughter. Do you know why Kylie was identified by a detective and Grandpa or Dad didn't go down there and identify her?
So the identification process happens during the autopsy, the formal identification. So the detective was at the actual autopsy itself. So they can't identify her without a coroner. The coroner makes the identification and then has a witness there as the detective saying, okay, I've got her ID, and the coroner will say, okay, I test, sign off on it. So an identification did not, they left her in. Keep in mind, they left her in the car when they took it out. The FBI, it was agreed upon between all the agencies there, the FBI would be the team to process the car and the body. So when the tow truck left, they went directly to an FBI facility. And then she was taken from there to, I believe she was spent overnight at a certain funeral home, and then taken to the facility where they did the autopsy body. So when the coroner makes the identification and then has a witness there as the detective saying, okay, I've got her ID, and the coroner will say, okay, I test, sign off on it. So an identification did not, they left her in. Keep in mind, they left her in the car when they took it out. The FBI, it was agreed upon between all the agencies there, the FBI would be the team to process the car and the body. So when the tow truck left, they went directly to an FBI facility. And then she was taken from there to, I believe she was spent overnight at a certain funeral home, and then taken to the facility where they did.
Okay. Now here he says that, so right directly He says they never took her out of the car at the site. They put her and the car up on the tow truck. From there, the tow truck took them to an FBI facility. And then from there, this part I don't understand. From the FBI facility, she was taken to a funeral home, spent the night at the funeral home. The next day was taken to the coroner's office for identification. Have you ever heard of that? Is that like I've never heard of that before. I've never heard of putting the body in the car on a tow truck. Usually the body is removed at the site where it happens. So then they took her to, the tow truck went to an FBI facility, dropped her and the car off. The FBI did whatever they did. They dropped her off at a funeral home where she stayed the night. And then the next day was transported to the coroner's office for identification and an autopsy. Why in the world was she left at a funeral home overnight? Like, see, this doesn't make any sense. And this isn't on him. This is on FBI, LE, whoever ran this freaking thing. I've never heard of that before. Why? Normally, you're taken right to the medical examiner's office where the autopsy is conducted, things are done, the ID is made, yada, yada, yada. I've never heard of this before. I've never heard of that at all. Like, why would they take her to a funeral home to stay the night before they even did autopsy, ID, any of that? That is sketchy as shit. Something is very, very wrong here.
The autopsy, but the actual identification was done, was not done that night.
Okay, because I always thought that isn't it like customary that like a family member has to come and ID someone or no? Is it go by different cases?
About, I would say probably in the last 10 years, I've never worked on a case where they have family members do identifications anymore, unless it's a like a Jane Doe or a John Doe where they and even then they'll just do it by photos. They don't take people into coroner's offices anymore and show them bodies. So they'll do it by she had a lot of identifying factors. She had the hardware from the wrist surgery that she could be identified by. She had certain piercings. She had the tattoo. So she, keep in mind, she was underwater a long time. She wasn't going to be identified strictly by just looking at her.
Okay. I did want to ask that because that one was bugging me.
Uh-huh.
Now you were at the search up where they were searching, right? Where the search parties and stuff was. Now they had a board. They had a dry erase board there.
Yeah.
And it said to keep an eye out for Kylie's keychain. It was a purple and black Zoomies keychain. Mm-hmm. Now, those of you that have been with me for a while, you know exactly what I'm talking about with this dry erase board that was up at the search party. We've talked about this how many freaking times on my channel. I said, how did they know? It said, keep an eye out. Well, it didn't say keep an eye out, but it said Kylie's keychain. It was Zoomies. It was purple and black. And it said, if you find, call Sammy's number. And then it had Sammy's number. And I said, how in the hell, at this point, she's still missing. So somebody tell me how we know her keychain is missing, right? Because it had to have been Sammy or somebody that knew that Kylie did not have her keychain because they're the ones that took the keychain from Kylie. So that's why I brought this up to ask him, because you were there. Why were they looking for a keychain? How did they know that her keychain was not with her in the car, right? I wanted to ask you, at that point during the search party, so Kylie had not been found yet, how did we know that her keychain was missing? Do you know that?
I don't know. I know that there were certain things to keep an eye out for. Like, I think what that was, and I could be wrong, but I think the reason they put that up there was they wanted to know certain unique identifiable things that she had on her. So I know that they said that when they figured out um, exactly like what type of phone case she had with a sticker or whatever, that was listed there. I think it was more listing like, hey, if you run across any, because you'll run across a lot of stuff out there, but if you run across this type of keychain or whatever, I don't think it's that they thought the keychain was missing or separated. It was just, I mean, but at that time you don't know. I mean, because you don't have the car, you don't have the person, so
See, now, like right now, as he's talking, I believe that he believes this. Like he believes in what he's saying right now. He himself is being truthful with what he believes. So him being like, well, I think they were just looking for, hey, keep an eye out for this. If you see this, we're just listing things like her cell phone case, the sticker. None of that was on the board. The only things that were written on that board were the keychain and license plates. Keep an eye out for license plates. Why? Keep an eye out for this keychain. How do we know why are we looking for a keychain when we don't even know where she's at? How do we know her keys are not with her? You guys know what I'm saying. But I think he believes what he's saying. I don't think he's being dishonest right here. I think this is what he believes, right?
anything's on the table. But I think what they were saying was, because they said, these type of sticker was on the car, this type of sticker was on the phone, this she had this type of keychain. It was anything that people remembered, like, oh, she, just like the sweater or whatever it was. So I don't think it was that they were saying that it was separated from, but there was misinformation out there. Like the thing that actually, the way that I actually met her grandfather was I was hanging around at like 6 something in the morning outside the trailer trying to figure out one. They had those maps. They had them like side by side. So they're supposed to be identical maps. They're just so like two rows of people could be looking at it, and but one said last sighting. They changed the last sighting time on one of the maps to like, I don't know if it was like 1:15 or something. Don't quote me on that, but it was different than what was originally told.
Right.
Like 30 or 45-minute difference. And so that's why I was like, well, how the hell did that change? And her grandfather walked out to walk his dog and out of the trailer. I didn't even know that they were sleeping in the trailer. And that's how the whole conversation started. I said, hey, excuse me, sir. I didn't know it was her grandfather. I said, do you know how this has changed? And he said, I don't. The kids update it, so.
Okay. And then so when the cops were obviously there, that
To like, I don't know if it was like 1:15 or something. Don't quote me on that, but it was different than what was originally told.
right.
Like 30 or 45-minute difference. And so that's why I was like, well, how the hell did that change? And her grandfather walked out to walk his dog and out of the trailer. I didn't even know that they were sleeping in the trailer. And that's how the whole conversation started. I said, hey, excuse me, sir. I didn't know it was her grandfather. I said, do you know how this has changed? And he said, I don't. The kids update it.
I mean, the kids update it. Seriously, you had the kids running the search parties. You had the kids running the evidence tables. You had the kids running the the teen talks. You had the kids running everything. And now they're in charge. They were also in charge of the Find Kylie website, and they were also and the Instagram, and they were also now in charge of updating the freaking maps and the timelines. Really? And people wonder why we question everything. People wonder why we're all against LE there. I wonder why. Did they couldn't it I mean, they make it seem like they couldn't investigate their way out of a paper bag. So why they had these kids running this whole operation, I don't get this.
So.
Okay. And then, so when the cops were obviously there that next day, that Saturday, but they said that there was no tire tracks going into the water. Like that
Right.
area was, so we're trying to figure out, how did the car get in there if they didn't see any tire tracks? So there was no tire tracks there at all in that area. Before I go on, I want to just go over here to Larissa's question that says, why did the kids have so much authority? Now, if you listened to, and I truly believe this, a lot of people don't agree with me, but whatever. When you listen to Lindsay's speech at the celebration for the community, and she says that these kids are our future. They have an army behind them. They are our future. That's exactly why these kids were able to do what they were able to do, because the parents needed their names and their reputations to be protected. These kids were doing what they were told to do. These kids were doing what they felt that they were supposed to do for this community. That's truly what I believe, because there is no other logical explanation for why these kids ran the entire operation. Think about that.
Well, so I think what they're talking about, there's tire tracks all over the area. It's a ATV park is what it is. So
Right.
I think what they meant was when you if you go down there like as a searcher or whatever, right when you hit where the water hits the land, it turns to like really soft mud. Like you step in it, so I think what they were saying is they didn't see any deep tire tracks going. And the only thing I can figure, only reason is that the soot must just fill in because it's really soft stuff, and that's why the swimmers were having a problem. I know because when they would kick with their fins, they would even stir up the bottom, and it's like clay is what it's like. It has the texture of like soft clay. So I think that's probably what they were talking about. But again, I get what you're saying and where you're going with it, but there was no tire tracks the next week either,
Right.
going into the water.
Right.
And so that's a confusing part, because it is soft sand there, but as far as like around right up to the water line, there's tire tracks everywhere,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Now during the press conferences, they had talked about how they had video of Kylie that night at the party. Like they had video of her now, did you yourself see any of that footage?
I've never seen any photos or video of her at the party ever.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I don't think the family has either.
Oh no.
I don't want to.
Now, don't you guys, yes, this chat is live. Now, don't you guys find that super odd that not even the family members have seen any photos or videos from Kylie from this party? I mean, that just blows my freaking mind, right? Like, so Ellie supposedly has 900 photos and all these videos of Kylie of the party and of Kylie at this party. Yet we've never seen one. The family members have never seen one. Nobody's ever seen that these exist. And then he goes on to say that it'll probably be just like the FBI usually waits 18 months to release anything from their cases. And then he goes on to say that it'll probably be 2 years before we ever see any photos from this party. You know why that is? Because they got to make them. They got to make these photos. I mean, this is bonkers, seriously. And this is against LE in Truckee, period. That is so odd.
I want to speak for her mom or her stepdad.
Right.
But I know up until the point she was found, that her grandfather or father had not seen any. We were wondering the same thing. Where the photos? We knew the FBI was going to, like I said earlier, we knew that they were going to try and gather that information, get that out of the kids, and they would be super tight with that. They probably didn't even share it with the sheriff's office, would be my guess. But I do know that they
in the first interview, I don't know if you're talking about with me, because it wasn't my interview that he said that. In the first interview I did with him, he never said anything about having videos on Discord, but I know you left a comment in my comment section that said, where are all the party photos that he had on his Discord? I've never seen them. All I've ever seen was fake photos. Okay.
they got a lot of photos and videos, because I know that kids in the interviews with Sammy, or whatever you want to call them, when Sammy did the let's go in the trailer, the team talks, a lot. I think there was talk that people had photos of the part. I don't know how many Kylie were actually in. I'm certain there were some, but I know there was a lot of actual photos and videos of the party. I do think that probably in the next year that those will come out. I think after about 2 years, like the FBI will be kind of forced under Freedom of Information Act requests to,
Right.
but they're going to sit on them for probably 2 years. I think when the laundry case, what was it, like a year and a half, 2 It's kind of the same thing there.
Yep. Now, so I know you had said that the case was closed, right? Am I
Yeah.
correct on that? Because I know some other people said that it was open.
It's in inactive status, same as being closed. You never close. They'll never close a case that wasn't an actual case. In other words, there's nothing to close. They were investigating something, but there wasn't a case. So the investigation file will go in inactive.
See, it just breaks my heart when people say that. Like there was no actual case here to investigate. What do you mean? Yes, there was. There is a 16-year-old girl who was totally fine, smart, pretty, ready to go to college, ready to get out of that hole, and then she's gone. And there's no case because there was no foul play, because nothing happened to her, and everyone is just willing to accept that it was an accident, including her own freaking mother. I and me and Chad have gotten into this so many times. Every time I do something on Kylie, it's an argument, because Chad is convinced that it was an accident. She was at a party, she OD'd, somebody did something to her, and then got rid of it and didn't call 911. Got rid of the car, didn't call 911. And I'm like, you cannot believe that is the truth. You can't believe that's the truth, right? And he's like, listen, he goes, I've been at a few parties where you would think that, somebody was got so drunk that she could barely walk. She could, and everyone's reaction was, get her away from me. I don't want nothing to do with it. I'm not going to jail over it. So Chad can sit there and he can say, listen, I get, these kids weren't going to ruin their lives for her. They weren't going to go to jail. They were going to college. They were not going to let this ruin their lives, basically. I don't see it that way.
Active status, it never, there's nothing to close. If it had been sent for charges, for the DA to decide if there's a case to be made and a case is open, then it'll be closed after it goes through the court process. But an investigation isn't a case, it's an investigation, so there's nothing to close. It goes into inactive status, meaning it's closed for further investigation. But if something was to come up, like some revelation, could it be reopened? Sure. it's always possible to be reopened up until the a statute of limitations date. Then it just goes into permanent.
But that's the problem here, that even if there was a revolution and even if there was huge evidence that was found that points to something bad happening to her by somebody else's hands, they how are they going to reopen the case when they didn't take DNA? A little bit of liver tissue was taken to test for drugs. The body is gone. Well, according to the story, right? So no new autopsies, no new samples, no new nothing. So even if bombshell evidence was dropped after the year, which we're coming up to, we're at what, 6-7 months after the year, it's over. So if there is going to be something that happens, it needs to happen ASAP, right? Or it's all gone, and it was all for nothing, and we were never able to get truth or justice in this case, which could very well be. Chad says it all the time. You may never get what you're looking for in this case. You may never find the truth. You may never get justice. You have to be okay with that, or it's going to eat you alive inside. I got to work on that then, because that's hard for me to accept.
Shelf status, but right now it's just an inactive status. It's not being further investigated. However, if something was to come to light before the statute of limitations ran up, then they could be reopened.
Right. Now, I mean, I was a teenager. I had parties with my friends. We drank underage. We did all that, but I mean, nobody ever ended up dead. But what I was gonna say is that there is a crime though here, and whether it's, the bottom line is, there was a bunch of kids. Kylie was 16. Somebody bought alcohol for that party.
Yeah.
Somebody, you know what I'm saying? Somebody supplied the
Yeah.
alcohol for all this to happen, if this is really what happened to her.
Yeah.
That shouldn't go on. That shouldn't be just pushed to the side and nothing done about it.
I
mean?
I agree with you. I've said it on Twitter that I think that it needs to be investigated.
Yeah.
I know her grandfather wants to investigate. Her grandfather asked me to investigate it, and I told him I would love to help him, but that's private investigation work, and I'm not licensed in California to do that. I was there as a search and rescue.
Right.
I can certainly give him ideas on how to do that, but I don't know where he stands on that right now. What I told him was he just wanted my opinion on certain things, and what I told him was I think that I mean, you're right. Somebody's provided all that alcohol, and we truly don't know who it is at this point. But I think that person may take a long time. But those are the type of things that you have on your conscience that drive people to drink and self-medicate with. And I wouldn't be surprised if 5 years down the line somebody has an amends to make through a program.
Now listen again to this part. I'm going to rewind it just a hair. Now he is talking about somebody specific in this. He didn't say any names. But for him to say what he's saying, if this is going to weigh on someone's conscience, this is going to drive them to drink. I wouldn't be surprised if this came out, if what really happened to her came out in some type of amends situation, like AA, where you have to go through the steps, and the 9th step is like making amends or something. That's what he's referring to. But he's talking about somebody when he says all of this. So listen again.
And what I told him was I think that I mean, you're right. Somebody's provided all that alcohol, and we truly don't know who it is at this point. But I think that person may take a long time. But those are the type of things that you have on your conscience that drive people to drink and self-medicate with. And I wouldn't be surprised if 5 years down the line somebody has an amends to make through a program or whatever, and more comes to light about that. I'm sure that is weighing on somebody right now. I just don't
Right.
know. I don't know who that person is.
Right. No, I agree.
I know her grandfather. I can't speak for her dad because I haven't talked to him about that part, but I know that there's certain families that would like to know. I don't think that it'll be found out through investigation. I think it's going to be found out through like an amends type of thing.
Okay. And I think, one of these things, and this is not against you, this is against Ellie there. I've just never seen an investigation run like this before. And it really, it seems from the outside. Now I'm an outsider, I wasn't there, but it honestly seems like, you see all these things happening in all these other cases where Ellie's doing this, they're getting search warrants for this, they're checking everybody's phones for this, like the geofence warrants and stuff for people's phones to find out who was in the area at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like they didn't investigate this like they should have. I think a lot of stuff was missed.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not a cop, I'm not a detective. I'm just saying from what I saw,
So I agree that the investigation was a complete clusterfuck. I was shocked by I think I was more shocked kind of by how they've handled the aftermath of her being found than anything, as far as no closing press conference and stuff like that. But I will say, and again, I think this comes back to the FBI being so tight-lipped, and they don't care that it creates problems. But I can tell you from being there, warrants were being issued throughout the day, every day.
They were.
I mean, they even did that sex offender sweep, where they which they arrested a bunch of people, but they got a warrant. They did a cell tower dump, so they got all the day. They have everybody's phone records that was connected to that tower from the party. They got those. They got there was a guy online that I think it was on TikTok that made some comment like, "Oh, I've got her in my basement" or something like that. And then
I remember that.
FBI immediately got a warrant, and the next thing was, "Oh shit, they knocked on my door at 6 a.m. And searched my place." Like I told you, a guy she had just talked to or met down in Mexico the week before, just everybody that she had come in contact with, they did get warrants. So
that guy that she had talked to down in Mexico, the cops talked to him?
Yeah, they drove like 160 miles away to where he lived. They interviewed like 4.
And this is the first time that I've ever heard of this. Kylie was talking to some guy in Mexico, apparently, when she was down there. And they went and talked to this guy. We have never heard of that before. We heard she was in Mexico with Anna, Mags, and her mother. But she met a guy down there, and they went and talked to him, and he lived 160 miles away. That's the first time I am hearing of this. Well, what else can I say about that? Who is this guy in Mexico? Hold on.
4 hours. There was nothing there. He just, I think it was on TikTok that made some comment like, "Oh, I've got her in my basement" or something like that. And then
I remember that.
FBI immediately got a warrant, and the next thing was, "Oh shit, they knocked on my door at 6 a.m. And searched my place." Like I told you, a guy she had just talked to or met down in Mexico the week before, just everybody that she had come in contact with, they did get warrants. So
that guy that she had talked to down in Mexico, the cops talked to him?
Yeah, they drove like 100
I have never heard of this. So, Queen, if you have pictures of this person that was down in Mexico, can you please send them to my email because I've never seen them. The only picture I saw of her in Mexico was on a horse.
And 60 miles away to where he lived. They
Wow.
interviewed him for like 4 hours. I mean, there was nothing there. He just met him
Right.
at- so-
Okay.
But they wanted to, because at this time, keep in mind, she's still not found at this time.
Right. Right.
So, and I think the abduction theory was more on the table because we thought there was no way that car was in the reservoir. They couldn't have
Right.
missed. What I was looking for was the phone. When I was kept searching the reservoir, but then that the day before Adventures Purpose got there, then I did get it on drone footage, and somebody that scanned my footage found it, and so then it kind of changed things a little bit. But you know, um, they did do, they had a judge that they were going to that was available 24/7 to sign warrants, and they pulled a lot. They got warrants right away for the AAA footage, potential footage. They went and they viewed all that, because that actually happened like a week or something before that all came out, but they immediately so then it kind of changed things a little bit. But when I was kept searching the reservoir, but then that the day before Adventures Purpose got there, then I did get it on drone footage, and somebody that scanned my footage found it, and so then it kind of changed things a little bit. But you know, um, they did do, they had a judge that they were going to that was available 24/7 to sign warrants, and they pulled a lot. They got warrants right away.
Sorry, I just wanted to say something real quick. Yes, Queen of the Rabbit Holes. I know what picture you're talking about, where that guy is standing in front of her and she's sitting next to the girl with the pink hair. Yeah, that's not in Mexico. That is from this other girl's Instagram, but it said it was in California on the tagged on the thing where like your location. So I don't know if somebody said that was Mexico or not, but that was not. I know what picture you're talking about now. Whoa, whoa, whoa. You don't want to do that. Okay.
For the AAA footage, potential footage. They went and they viewed all that, because that actually happened like a week or something before that all came out, but they immediately went to AAA, and that's how we knew it was, kind of a bullshit story. But
So once they heard about this, they went to AAA. He says they saw all the footage. That's how they knew the story was BS. I don't know though. I don't know. Let me ask you guys. I'm gonna take a poll in the chat real quick, okay? The AAA footage. If you believe that it is legit and it exists and that Nick was telling the truth, throw a 1 in the chat. If you think Nick's story was BS and there is no footage, throw a 2 in the chat. I just want to take a quick tally here. Somebody said 1.5. Wow, there's a lot of 2s. Yep, pretty interesting. I've always believed in the tow truck story. Always. Okay. I just want to see where you guys were all at. And if you're watching this not live and you're watching this on replay, put a 1 or a 2, whatever you believe, down in the comments. Okay.
So they did do a lot of warrants. They just don't tell anybody about it, which kind of I can understand to a degree why they wouldn't say who the warrants were served upon, because if they had nothing to do with it, they don't need their name tied up in the media and stuff like that. But they should say, hey, yeah, we served. They made a press release about the sex offender stuff, but I guess that's because the sheriff's department did it instead of the FBI. But I mean, they were doing things, not everything. They weren't. What I felt like they were doing is they were doing it like they're going down a checklist, like a pre-plan in every case. But they weren't doing is thinking practical stuff like, I'll say it again. This from the time she was thought to be missing, say like 10 o'clock the next morning, when she doesn't show up at the Starbucks to go camping. From that time forward, this case should have not taken more than 12 hours, because somebody should have said, hey, those fire cameras. And, something important to keep in mind on the fire cameras is what everybody saw was web resolution, still frames taken every 1.25 seconds, but that's because they have all these cameras and they're uploading to Amazon Web Services, and they've got a whole server farm just dedicated to them. But what the fire cameras themselves and the fire departments have access to is actual high res 4K video footage. So once the cameras were once figured out the cameras, they got 4K regular video footage, very clear. So but somebody should have thought about that within the first 6 or 8 hours. Said, hey, we got the fire cameras, and they pull it and case over, like keep divers in the water because the car is there, somewhere. And I think that they had the reason I think that I think I told you last time that
he has brought up, now not just in this interview, but this interview and the last interview I did, he's brought up the fire cams 3 times to me. Now I know that he knows how I feel about them fire cams. So listen, the restraint and I don't know what y'all would call it. I would call it professionalism. Like, I'm not a professional, interviewer, but I think I did a good job, because there was a lot that he said that I didn't agree with, but I was able to keep my composure. But he knows how I feel about them fire cams. Everybody knows how I feel about them fire cams. So I just wanted to point that out, that he did that's the 3rd time he brought them up to me. And I don't care what anybody says. I do not believe that at all. I do not believe that video showed Kylie or somebody driving into the lake. I don't buy it, and I never will. Okay.
That I wouldn't be surprised if somebody else witnessed it or had a good idea the car went in the water besides the girl that was or it could have been the girl that worked at the grocery store. I don't really know. But when the dive boats, when they were searching, seemed very focused in that area, and they were right on top of the car, like it ends up. But
right.
I've put photos out there on Twitter about one photo about this before, and I'm happy to send you the photo. But when David and Daniel had left by then, but when we were there, and David and I were actually, I remember we were talking about Adventures of Purpose thing being like that. This doesn't make any sense, like the Boca thing, and we were starting to think. But when CHP got on scene, they in very short amount of time, they started taking all these measurements for these cameras and certain tools, and they laid out with cones this very specific pattern. And then they put, they taped off a box, that everybody asked like what that box is. But they seemed to know, they didn't tell us anything, but they were working off a very specific theory. And I can only imagine that's because they had a witness statement saying, I saw the car driving along the beach. We were starting to think, but when CHP got on scene, they in very short amount of time, they started taking all these measurements for these cameras and certain tools, and they laid out with cones this very specific pattern. And then they put, they taped off a box, that everybody asked like what that box is. But they seemed to know, they didn't tell us anything, but they were working off a very specific theory. And I can only imagine that's because they had a witness statement saying, I saw the car driving along the beach. And then,
See right there, he just said that when CHP came in, they were working off of one theory and they didn't investigate or look into any other possible theories. That right there is a botched investigation. When you have cops that go into something and they don't go into it with an open mind and they go into it thinking, okay, this is what I think. I think this is an accident. I think she drove into the water, and you don't investigate any other possibilities, then you botch this investigation. Every one of them should be freaking fired and let go without pay. I don't care. I don't care. A 16-year-old girl is gone. You came into it with a state of mind, with an opinion. You let your bias control the investigation. You should be fired. What kind of cops or what kind of people run an investigation and don't investigate every possible theory out there? You should be fired. Sorry, not sorry. Fire all of them.
Something happened because they didn't explore other options like her coming down like the Grant Hughes.
They did not explore any other options. Forget.
Video shows, they laid out the cone pattern, and you can tell that's a fishtail, and then that box is where some inflection point, something, where I guess they think the car maybe either spun and started.
Why did it now? If you guys remember, when they pulled out, they were pulling her car out of the water, there was a little section. It was taped. There's a little section taped off, right? And we were all going, "What the hell is in that section? There's something taped off in there. What are they looking at?" Because we were told there was no tire tracks at all. So what were they looking at in that section? Right now, he's telling us that those cones were blocking off squiggly tire tracks, like fishtail tire marks. But we were told that there was no tire marks. So you guys tell me.
Going backwards into the water or rolled or whatever, however it happened. But they knew to lay those, because keep in mind, the car was not out of the water yet. So they hadn't seen it besides a photo. They didn't know exactly which angle, precisely, but they knew. So I have a feeling that there's a witness statement out there we don't know about, because that's the only way they would assume that the car was driving along the beach like that, which makes sense, that it would be driving along the shoreline, and then when she gets to the point, like oh shit, there's the water, so.
Okay, now would it be possible? Because because when she was found in the backpack, the
Yeah.
hatchback, right?
Yep.
Now, I know a lot of people have put out videos with their CRVs and stuff, and a lot of people have said that like she couldn't have floated between the seats from the front to the back.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of people have theories out there that somebody else was in the vehicle with her, accidentally drove in on accident, not meaning to go in the water,
Yeah.
and they were able to get out, and she was not able to get out because she was passed out in the back. Now I don't know. Again, like it's just hard to wrap your head around. Well, could she have drove in there by herself when she was found in the back of the vehicle?
Yeah. So, and I get why people have questions about that, but I've seen a lot of these water recovers, and I've had to study them, for
Okay.
and stuff. I would say probably 65% of people are found in the back of vehicles like that. And so much, yeah, and I don't know which of the two it is in her case. First of all, um, a body will, obviously float, and then it'll sink for about 18 to 24 hours, and then it'll rise again. But it can go back, but more times than not, and it's tragic to even think about, but people, that's where the last of the air is. And so I think what people got to keep in mind is and the one thing I don't understand people are saying is that they're like, well, the back window was down, and the front one was so you got the back window about what 3/4 of the way down is all it'll go. I can almost guarantee you that if not even in water, if I blindfolded you and then spun you around a couple times and then put you in the driver's seat and I said, I'll give you a minute, get out, the back window behind you is down, get out, I almost guarantee you're not gonna be able to get out. You're gonna be disoriented, even though in which she didn't. I mean, she might know it's down, but everybody's thinking she didn't know she was gonna hit the water. She hits the water, and the first thing people do is they freeze and they panic. It's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, is this a drink? Like hoping that it'll just poof you're out of it. And then real panic sets in. So on top of that, now you got a pitch dark. You got the fear and confusion, adrenaline rush like you've never had before. Now you turn upside down, and you've got water, like a waterfall pouring through the window, because that's and if you've ever sat under a waterfall, a natural one, or in a pool or resort or something, that is like a lot. It's like disorienting, it's like annoying, and it's also the trouble spot. So we see this in active shooter situations, where an active shooter comes in a door, which is also the exit, and what people do is instead of going to the exit, they try to put distance between themselves and the problem, and they corner themselves, but they just want to get distance. And so it's the same thing with the car. You've got the water rushing in, the water that's going to drown you. You want to get away from that water, where actually that's your only escape route, but you actually back away from it, and now you've got all this noise. You're upside down, it's dark, you don't know what the hell happened, you're panicking, and you can't, when you're hyperventilating too like that, you can't hold your breath. So it's like, you get to the back of the car and you're like, oh my God, I'm cornered. And it just does not take long. And it's, it's
Right.
really hard to get out of a situation like that. And she's not going to be calm and like, okay, I just need to go out the back, fight the raging water coming in and swim out that. And plus, is even as tiny as she is, I mean, like you're saying, how could she get in the back? How the hell can she get out the window? So I mean, people got to think that through. You're in a panic. That this is your life's on the line, and
right.
But more times than not, it's just like an active shooter. People will try to get away from the problem, and the problem is the water rushing in, and so they go to the back corner, and then unfortunately, they take away their escape.
Okay. Now, the last thing I just want to touch back on real quick is the seat belt. Now, I know you said that you did not like specifically see it yourself. However, like I wonder though, and I know a lot of people do too. You know, and I don't know if this is true, but a lot of people have said that the only way that that belt could have been sticking out of the back was if it had been because of where it is in the vehicle, if it had been over her, like, you know, like she was strapped, like it was over her to strap her in. Now, you don't know if that has any.
I don't know how it got like it is. I can tell you, like, I saw photos and video of her in, you know, in the car in the back, still underwater, and I can tell you she was not strapped down.
Okay, and just to make this,
she was not in a position like she'd been strapped down.
Okay,
she was in a position like she gotten back there and got stuck, and then was maybe trying to get back out of that. You know,
and just to clear this up, because I know a lot of people are they're gonna hear what you had said a minute ago and just go with it when you were talking about me. So just to be clear, Kylie did not. She was not blindfolded, right?
Oh no, I'm just saying because
I know what you're saying, but a lot of people were gonna go.
Thank you. No, what I meant with the blindfold is because it was pitch dark, and I know the moonlight, but now when you're in the water and upside down, what I was saying is if I just took a car on its wheels in a driveway and I put a blindfold on you so you couldn't see the orientation of anything,
right? Okay.
Back window behind you, 3/4 of the way down, you have 1 minute, get out.
Yeah.
I don't think you could fumble around, and you don't even have the water coming in, and you know, all those other elements. But thank you. No, she was not blind. She was in no
I just wanted to clear that up.
No way tampered with or anything like that. You know,
okay,
like tied down or there was nothing. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's really all of my questions. So I won't keep you any longer, but I do want to thank you
Sure.
for agreeing to do this. And, you know, I mean, it does help. It helps. So I just want to say,
listen, I know it's tragic. You know, I mean, the people that say like I'm trying to help cover up stuff, but I've dedicated my whole life to helping and rescuing and finding people. And I've also dedicated to and I'm involved in a lot of situations, a lot of finds and stuff where it's domestic violence or whatever, you know, where a person is not alive. You know, I stick through to the end, you know, in the court cases and stuff to make sure that justice happens. If I thought anything, I would not betray her father or grandfather if I had information thinking like, oh, this could be if somebody, I don't care if it's an 18-year-old like Sammy or whoever, and it's going to cost them their life. You know, if they did something, then that needs to be done. But and like I think you said in the last interview, I was in that camp. You know, I thought this has got to be foul play because we couldn't find the car and everything. But then once we found it and you put all the pieces together, it just wasn't. It was a tragic accident. She should not have been left alone. I think that there is, you know, I don't think a prosecutor would ever take that case. Could one be made? Maybe. Somebody gave her out.
And he says that I don't think any prosecutor would ever take this case. And it can't be because lack of evidence. It can't be because lack of circumstantial evidence anyway, because we've got a boatload of circumstantial evidence, right? We don't have any you know, hot fire freaking evidence, but we have lots and lots of circumstantial evidence. So when he says that I don't think any prosecutor would ever touch this case, I'm thinking it's because of the people involved, right? Not because of lack of evidence. I'm thinking nobody will ever touch it because of all the people involved, because of all the money involved, because of all this bullshit with all these people, right?
Alcohol. She got left. I don't know if it's a crime to leave somebody, but certainly a crime to give a 16-year-old alcohol. And so somebody has got that on their conscience, I hope. But as far as she wasn't, what happened is that led to a tragic accident.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, again, thank you. Okay. Yep, too much money, too many big names. That's the problem. If he's saying that no prosecutor would ever touch it, my guess is that's why. So I mean, I don't agree with everything that he says. Obviously, there was a lot I disagreed with. Obviously, y'all are, you're all intuitive too, and we're, so take what you want, leave the rest. It doesn't matter. But when you have somebody that was there, bottom line, they were there, we weren't there, you have to be willing to listen to what they say, right? I mean, I was telling Chad this last night. Look at Sammy's interview that she did with American Dream Chaser. I mean, there was so many lies and contradictions in there, but we learned a lot from that interview, right? So that's kind of what you have to do. Take what you get out of it, and then just don't worry about the rest, right? So yeah, that was that interview. I want to go over the first interview because I think a lot more was said without being said in the first interview. So we will be going over that one. But I did have company that showed up in the middle of doing this live. So I've got to take care of some stuff. And then probably I'm going to shoot for around 5:00, do another live and go over the first interview. So I hope you guys can all be here for that. So I'm just going to ask you again, please hit this thumbs up. Please sub to the channel if you have not done so already. Anybody who wants to join to become a member, the link's down in the description below. Anybody that wants to donate, links are all down in the description below. I hope you guys like this video. Please leave any comments down in the comment section. That works with the YouTube algorithm. So I will be back. Look for me around 5. I should have my video up so you guys can all, I should have that up and ready to go by 4, but we were not going to start the live until 5. So I love you guys. Stay strong, stay healthy, stay safe. Keep asking those hard questions. Keep spreading that light. Melissa, thank you so much for the super sticker. I love you guys. I'll see you back here at 5:00. Bye.